Welcome to the Farming Without the Bank podcast, the show with a no BS approach to money, hosted by a farm strategy expert and authorized IBC practitioner. Join us as we get real and expose the flaws of traditional financial institutions in order to help farmers take control of their finances, create peace of mind, grow their wealth, and leave a legacy. Now, here's your host, Mary Jo Irmen.
Hello and welcome to today's podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in again or coming back, or you know the routine. I say it every single podcast. I today have Tim Bickett back. If you have not listened to Tim before, I had him on, I don't know, a few podcasts ago. And we were talking about crop marketing and commodities marketing and all that good stuff. And I'm not the expert there, so go listen to that podcast with Tim if you want marketing advice. Today, we are not talking about marketing advice. Tim went to a seminar and had some training on what he calls long-lasting positive impact. And so he reached out to me and said, Mary Jo, this might be a good podcast idea over the holidays. And I said, yes, I love it. And so here we are today to talk about something that I don't talk a lot about, which is relationships and the fuzziness of them. Because y'all remember, I am 100% German and there is no fuzzy anything. And so I have to bring guests on that are a little more fuzzy than I am. So we are going to talk to Tim, and it's kind of ironic because I have been thinking about this book that I read that connects a lot with what Tim is going to talk about today. So we are going to get both of those in. So this could be a long episode. It could be a short episode. I'm not sure, but we're just going to be here to inspire you to talk to those family members that you're going to sit down with at Thanksgiving and at Christmas, if you can, I guess, and your state's not on lockdown for stupid COVID. But if you can talk to them and have that conversation or run into somebody that has made an impact in your life. And so Tim is not talking about business today. We are merely just here to talk and share with you how to create better relationships with those around you. So thank you, Tim, for bringing this to my attention and for being here again today. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm excited. It's going to be one of those topics that I'm going to have to keep myself from talking too fast.
Let the passion flow. Yeah. All right. So can you share with us a little bit about just the overall picture of it? Sure. And where you learned about it, who talked to you about it, where can they get like the deeper information?
Right. And so it's really, there's two big components that formed what I want to call Be the Light campaign, right? That's kind of my, epiphany was be the light to other people, and inspire them by letting them know how important they are, right? Because everybody likes to be told about the good things about who they are. And so the first part of it was an exercise called Life's Board of Directors, right? And we had that it was at a business training meeting that I was at, and it was just super cool. And so, it basically, this guy, our leader comes and tells us, is I'm going to show you today how you can have a long-lasting positive impact on others around you. And he asked, who wants to do that? And we all raise our hand, right? Who doesn't want to have a positive impact on people they interact with? And says, okay, so start. It's just, I get in front of you is a piece of paper, and it's got an oval that represents your board table in your conference room for your life's board of directors, right? So write your name at the top. And he says, no board of directors is full unless you have the right people in the right seats. So I want you to go around this table, and I want you to write down the names of people that have had a positive impact in your life, okay? So you start writing, and then he's talking a little bit about who are these people? He says, they don't, they could be your mother, your father, a coach, a priest, It could be a random person off the street. And there's a person on my board of directors that I've only ever talked to for 30 minutes. I was in a restaurant in Southwest Minnesota early one morning. I'd had a hard week of travel for work, and it was like 5:30, right? It was a 24-hour diner. And I'm sitting at this horseshoe counter up in front, right, by myself. And these guys are in a booth just right behind me. And they were talking and having a conversation about how at the time some of the most popular songs on country music radio had a really good Christian message, right? And so being the shy person that I am, I spun my chair around and I said, guys, I don't mean to interrupt, but I said, I noticed that the other day. I spent 10 hours in a vehicle by myself, and it's just cool. It's just cool that the popular songs of the day had a good Christian. And so we weren't like 2 minutes into this conversation, and Lonnie asked me the life-changing question. He says, Tim, are you a Christian?
Lonnie, the guy at the table.
Lonnie, this guy I just started talking with, right? He asked me that question. And no one had ever publicly challenged my faith before, right? And I have to tell you that I had a theater scholarship. I've done dozens of plays. I can effectively convey a message. And what changed me was how poorly I answered it. It was kind of a mumble. It was, I got out, yes. And he just kind of, okay, And for the rest of that day, the rest of that trip, I thought to myself, I was kind of mad with myself. I'm like, Tim, you are so gifted. How you answered that question of one of the, life's more important questions was in my terms, pathetic. And so I made a promise that if anybody ever asks me that question again, I'll answer it better, which is also hedging a little bit. For 35 years, nobody had answered that question. So probably nobody's going to answer me that question again for another 35, right? So I got a lot of time to prepare. Less than 6 weeks later, I'm on a plane to Washington, D.C., and the gentleman sitting next to me, again, we've been talking, the plane is hardly in the air, and he asked me the same question. So for the next 3 hours on our flight to D.C., I answered the question better. But that's just how one person in an interaction, that's why Lonnie Onken is on my life board of directors, okay? Because he had a long-lasting positive impact in my life, okay?
So it doesn't have to be the long-lasting positive impact when we're making the list, right? Because this is hard for people.
Yep.
Tim, and I've done lots of trainings like this too, and to get out of your head, it's only business related. It's only going to be farm related or people that helped me in my business or teachers in high school, right? Because those are the people that that society constantly talks about. Right. And so if we can, I'm just going to challenge all the listeners, if you can make that list and think about people like Lonnie, who that to most people, that would have just been a question, Tim. Right. Oh, okay, I answered that poorly, right? And so I'm going to do something about it. But they wouldn't connect that with the long-lasting impact that had.
Right.
And so if you're making your list, as Tim goes through this, if you're making your list, which I challenge you to do it, think of those people that have truly had an impact, that maybe were the guy on the plane, the guy in the restaurant, whoever you just randomly maybe ran into. Maybe it was, a homeless person on the corner who you gave money to and they said something, or you heard something from, you heard something on the radio or whatever. That could be it too. What were those things or those people, right? Is it things too or just people? No, it's just people because it's board of directors.
Just people. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So you've got your oval, you've got your board table, you've wrote some names around it. And the next step is you write a couple words or a short sentence next to that individual's name about why they're on your board. Okay. And this is an intentional process, right? And it forces us to, look at positive things, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. But I have a cousin who recently did Veterans Day interview, right? And one of the most impactful people in her life was her dad, right? But in that moment, as it related to her military experience, it was his negative impact. He told her, he says, I love you to death, but this is a man's army. You shouldn't go into the army, right? But this is my view of that situation. And she says, no, Dad, I'm going to show you that a woman can be successful in today's army, right? Well, my take on that situation, as I talked to my older sister about it, is that was the good Lord using Dale's negative attitude positively, right? And so those people that had a positive impact in their life, it doesn't always have to come from a quote unquote positive experience, right? But Barb will tell you that if Dad hadn't said that, I don't know if I would have pursued the dream as hard as I did, but I'm going to prove to my dad that no, this is possible. And so that was also that. So a couple words, a short sentence on why they're on their board. Okay. And what I wrote to next to Lonnie Aachen was faith, right? Is that, and how I answered that, we were talking earlier about my high school wrestling coach. And that's really the next part of it is, who are they? We talked about that. Was they a coach? Is it a parent? Is it an uncle? Is it a neighbor who you farmed with for 15 years? Is it a random person in a restaurant? And so everybody's people are going to be different, right? And that's the other part of this is that through this exercise, we're continuing to remind us, like, do you want to have a long-lasting positive impact on people you interact with, right? And we do. We have that desire to make a difference, to help people out any way we can. And so we've got our people around the edge of our table. We've got a few words written next to them. We've defined who they were in our life. And now I'm going to show you how that you too can have a long-lasting positive impact in other people's lives. Everybody got their pen ready because this is going to be big. Get ready to write it down. So look at your table and the people around your table and the words you wrote next to those people. If you want to have a long-lasting positive impact in the lives of people that you interact with, go do those things.
And that's a challenge. I think that is probably a bigger challenge than writing down who's had an impact in your life.
What I'm going to get to next is a bigger challenge.
Okay, then I'll shut up and listen.
No, but it is. It's like if one of your people on your board of directors showed you about honest dealings in business, be honest in your business dealings, okay? And be that light, be that example for somebody else about what honest business looks like. If somebody on your board of directors was like my high school wrestling coach that continued to push me in a good way to be the best that I could be in that moment and not give up and be prepared for that event, go model that. Go model those types of behaviors and inspire others to be better based on your interaction. So here's the big challenge. And this is where we get to the next part of this is, so you've got your people around your table, you got words next to them, you've thought about how they impacted your lives and how you interacted with them. You've made a commitment to go do these things that you've wrote down. Now the next challenge is, and this is where we get really into the legacy planning part of it and connecting with the letters from Dad, is that I want you to go tell the people that are on your board of directors why they're on your board of directors. Seek them out, have that conversation with your high school wrestling coach if he's still alive. And if he's not still alive, reach out to his family. And I had that opportunity this past spring. My best friend from high school, best man at my wedding, his dad passed away in April. And Martin was my junior high school Sunday school teacher. And we spent a year talking about morality and decisions. And Martin was a great English teacher by trade, but he was also, and so in the days surrounding his death, I went back home and I had the chance to tell all of his kids why their dad was on my life board. And some of the things he shared with us in Sunday school, his kids didn't. Wow. And it was just a really cool experience about, like, you know him as Dad, but this is how I remember your dad. And I just want you to know that that's who Martin Connor was to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to catch up with my high school wrestling coach this summer at a sheep show. And now Ken Rummel, he's a Hall of Fame wrestling coach. If they have an Olympics next year, he'll be a part of that coaching team. Just a super guy. But again, how he cared for the people that were on his wrestling team, and how he taught biology. Just those things. That's why Ken was on my board of directors. It had a positive impact in my life. And so having those conversations, and this is the next piece of it, that if you can't get together face to face with them, whether it's because of distance or the current coronavirus COVID situation we're in, and it's a family member, and better yet, even if you can get together with them, write them a letter, right? Write them a letter and then read it to them. It takes some big bones to do that.
So that is my question. Is it takes some big bones to do either of these? And I just so let's just use me as an example, because I started this podcast with it. So I'm not a warm and fuzzy kind of person. Like, I could go my whole life without hugs. Right. I'm totally 100% okay with that. I have the t-shirt with the cactus. No need to hug me. Right? And so saying those things, like, obviously, if it's my spouse, it's a whole different story, right? I'll tell Scott how much I love him and how awesome he is and whatever. Right. But to tell a stranger that, and for our parents' generation to say that didn't happen in German country, and to get out of that comfort zone. And I have another client that I talked to about this, and I said, because we were visiting, and he said his dad was not supportive at all, ever, about anything. Right. And he is so different with his children, so different, to the point of just, encourages them for everything. Come on, Dad.
Really?
Stop it. Like, be quiet. Enough. I know you love me. And I said, why such the change? And he said, because I wanted that, and I promised never to be like that. But how do we get those bones to write that letter, to say that? Like, was that addressed in this whole training that you guys had?
So that was the second training.
Oh.
The earlier training that I'd done.
That had its own training.
Yeah. It was actually called a program that we did at church, and it was called Letters from Dad.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And the whole gist of that is, especially in today's day and age, getting a letter from somebody that's important to you is a big deal, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was about helping guys develop the bones as dads to write those letters. Mm-hmm. And guess who the first letter you write to?
Dad.
To your spouse.
Oh.
Okay. And you're supposed to read that letter to your spouse, and this really sounds like it's a Hallmark movie, type deal.
Hey, but I like Hallmark movies.
Yeah.
Just so everybody listening out there knows, I like a Hallmark movie. They're all the same. Every single one of them's the same. But you know what? Everything ends happy and nobody's dying. In the movie, everybody's dead before the movie even starts. But
the cool part about writing somebody something, and especially if it's on good paper with good ink, is that it's nearly timeless. Mm-hmm. And I recently had a cousin of mine shared a letter that my sister, who passed away 15 years ago, had written her almost 30 years ago. And it had been tucked away in her Bible, and she came across it and she shared it with the family. And that was cool.
Mm-hmm. It's like, it's as important as an old recipe from grandma.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just my sister being her sister, being herself, right? Mm-hmm. That she just had a great experience at this Teens Encounter Christ weekend, and he just wanted to let Bridget know how important she was, and that whole piece of it. And there's some drive in this whole Be the Light campaign that comes from my sister's experience fighting leukemia. That is a part of my drive to let people know about it, because that's what she said. She said, this whole thing will be worth it, meaning her 18-month fight with leukemia, if I can make a difference in somebody's life.
Mm-hmm.
That's what she told my sisters. And, I know she's watching, so I can tell her that she made a difference in that time frame. But I can tell you that my penmanship, Mrs. Zimmerman did not beat me enough, okay? My penmanship is really hard to read, right? So I type my letters and I sign them, but it's not on regular computer paper. It's on stationery, right? Good, heavy paper. Write your name and put it in a good envelope and deliver it to the person that you want it to get to. Don't trust the UPS to get it there, right? If at all possible. And that's the part you mentioned of it earlier, that in today's piece of it where, our family gatherings maybe aren't going to be what they have been in the past couple of years because people don't want to or can't gather or whatever. Perfect time. Perfect time. And this is part of my thinking too, is that what a great time frame to step out and let's put a great cap on 2020 because 1,000 people reached out to people that were important with them and shared letters. Okay. What kind of community impact could this have? Right.
And don't wait until you have that 18-month fight with cancer, right? Don't wait until you're too sick to say it. Say it now so that you can enjoy that person going forward and pick out those nice things. Even if it's not, and I know this is sidetracked from your board of directors, but even if you don't have, if you're farming with a family member and they're not on your board of directors for some reason, it doesn't mean you can't do the same thing and write to them why you appreciate them. Because you are farming together, your family. You appreciate everybody to a different level for a different reason.
Right.
And so why? What is it that you appreciate about that person? Because who doesn't like to know that they're appreciated?
Yeah. Well, and this is the other part of the written word, right? Is that it doesn't have to be 1,000-word essay, right? The gentleman that put the Letters from Dad campaign together that we took part of, it was based on a sticky note. His daughter, when she was about 15 years old, had something going on at school that day that was going to require an outfit change, right? And so on her second outfit, he just put a sticky note on there that says, "Have a great day. Love you, Dad." Didn't think nothing of it. That's just whatever. He knew it was an important day for her. And so he's moving her home from college 8 years later. And he goes into her closet, and what's on her hanger? A sticky note from Dad that said, "You're important to me. Have a good day. Love, Dad." Right? And so even if it's that, it doesn't have to be, again, a long diatribe. It's a note. It can be on a thank you card. Says, "You know what, Cousin Jimmy, I know we don't always see eye to eye on everything, but I want you to know that I do appreciate all the effort you put into our operation. Jim, you put it in an envelope or put it in his lunchbox or whatever." It's just those types of things that can be where it starts. And once you get the bug, so to speak, and you've got a little bit of bones built up to build on, it's a little bit addictive. Okay. To see the reaction that people have to it. I have good fortune. My older brother, Dennis, he had received the Douglas MacArthur Leadership Award in the Army, right? Pretty prestigious, like one of, they award like 2 or 3 of them a year, right? In all of the U.S. Army. And my brother, Dennis, received that award. And so I sent him a letter. I sent him a letter and says, "Hey, I'm super proud of you. Proud to be called your little brother. This is cool, and when you get this letter, give me a call." Okay. That's the gist of my letter. And I know how long the mail takes to get to where he lives, and I hadn't heard anything from him. And I called his wife one afternoon and I said, "Angie, did Dennis get my letter?" She's like, "Oh yeah, he got your letter." I'm like, "Perfect. That's all I wanted to know." and so that part of it it's just cool. Mm-hmm. A simple act of being intentional and thinking about people that are important to us and then reaching out. And the letter part of it is probably more for people that we can't touch, but my business associates or my high school wrestling coach, they're probably going to get a short note type deal, but just, I know that was important. Just that conversation was important to Ken, and it's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things that through the end of 2020, and let's put this stuff behind us as we're moving forward, that combine these two intentional processes and get out there and approach things with a bit of gratitude and bless some other people. And in the process, we can include it in our legacy planning about how we make sure that the people that are important to us that are more likely going to be included in our estate. Mm-hmm. They're two different things in my mind. You have this legacy planning about what do I want people to remember of me? Mm-hmm. And the estate planning is what to do with my asset.
Yep. And I think that's very important. How do I want to live my life, and what legacy do I want to leave? Right. And people ask me all the time, like, what's your purpose here? What's farming without the bank? What's the whole purpose? And I'm like, to save family farms. Like, the purpose is not for Mary Jo to get rich. Right. That's not the purpose. The purpose behind it is to make sure we can help as many family farms as we can. Right. What's your purpose behind your farm? Who helped you create what it is today? And a lot of times we don't look outside the family. And so I think I think the legacy piece of it wrapped with that is important. And that's what you reached out to me with, is Mary Jo, I think that this is important for legacy planning. So as much as this has been a very fuzzy thought, right, it's just a thought until we do it. And I think that we have to do it. And when Tim and I were talking a little bit before we started recording, I was telling Tim about the book Willing Wisdom. And so those of you this will be on, if you're listening on audio, it'll be on YouTube as an actual recording between Tim and I, so you can see us. But the book Willing Wisdom is written by Thomas William Deans. I think he's out of Canada. However, it very much goes into a little bit of what Tim is talking about. And so it's great to have this board of directors reflect on who has made those impacts, how you want to make impacts going forward. But it was funny, Tim, because when I was going over your notes a little bit before we started talking, in the book, he says, silence is the great destroyer of wealth, relationships, and human potential.
Wow.
Right? Because if we don't tell people, if we don't do those letters, if we don't tell people how much we appreciate them or what they've done for us, how do they know?
Right.
If people do things for the right reason, they don't expect to get that back. They can just see that they do it because they're happy, right? They can see they're creating happiness in people. But at the end of the day, when we are talking about legacy planning or estate transfer, when we're working with family, I think this is even more important, to take the information that you have and mix it with the family. How did this impact outside the family affect what I'm doing in the family? And the people in the family, like you were talking about your wrestling coach. No.
Wrestling coach, yeah.
No, it wasn't your wrestling coach. The guy that didn't know, your English teacher. Oh. The family didn't know a lot of stuff that he had shared with you.
Yeah.
And so we tend to not share a lot of stuff with our family, who basically molded me to be who I am and why. And so this is our board of directors, but why not share that board of directors with our family? Right. And say, this is why these people impacted me. This didn't just come from my family. So this excuse of, well, we don't do that in my family. So who cares? Right? If you look back on your board of directors, and who do you want to be surrounded with, is kind of how I look at that. No, I wasn't in your training and I'm just kind of adding to it. But if we're going to piece that together with estate planning, I love the idea. I love the fact that you guys are, if you're listening to the podcast and you're sitting in a truck hauling grain, dig out a piece of paper. Who are your board of directors and why? Yeah. We talk about this a lot with farm mediation. When was the last time you told your spouse you appreciate them for whatever it is that they did? You know? And I talked to a young gal the other day who said she's getting shamed by the sister-in-law because she's not out driving tractor. She's not out running combine. Who cares? Who cares if you have one family member? I don't drive tractor. Right. I mean, I can haul grain, right? Like, I mean, they've taught me how to do that, but I can't, my mom doesn't drive tractor. She never has. She's never driven a truck. She's never driven a combine. That's not her place in that whole big picture. But without her, clothes aren't clean. Food's not on the table. And so somebody doesn't have to be in the field or working the cows to be part of all of that. Right. Because without that other person, you're not going to have that. So right. I think that board of directors can even be expanded if it was me sitting here saying, I think that that's important, but let's go a little bit further and say what are the people closest to you doing right. that you appreciate that you've not said?
Right. And that's the first step in making this work is that you have to be intentional in your thought process about, I want to do this. Okay. That's the first step. I desire this, whether that's to lose weight, gain muscle, or sit down and write my life's board of directors out. I have to be intentional about it. And it gets us into a place where we're thinking about people that we have gratitude for. And it's a good place to go. Okay. On a regular basis. It's not a one-time trip, right? That you can revisit this because it will change, and I like the idea about, once every year on my birthday, I gather the people that are important to me and I sit them down and I say, this is where I'm at today. Yep. It's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah. And that's from the Willing Wisdom book. I was sharing that with Tim before we started. And so in this book, he talks about, just to give you a little background to fill in what Tim just said there, he talks about sitting your family down and really explaining to them or talking about what is in my will. What is this estate plan? What does that look like? And the storyline in this book, he sat down, he got his family together every year on his birthday, and they talked about him dying. Like, it sounds crazy, but guess what? If you talk about dying, doesn't mean you're going to die the next day. Right. So he sits down and he brings them all in and he asks some questions. And there's questions in this book of what you need to be asking your family. And those questions are, if we leave you an inheritance, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to treat that? And how your kids or those that you're going to leave this to answer that is going to give you a good indication of what's going to happen to what you leave them. If you have a child that doesn't show up for the meeting, you have a good indication of what your inheritance means to them. If you have a child that is argumentative because they're not going to get the exact same amount as another child, you have a good indication of who's going to be the troublemaker. And so this is all stuff that is super important, but to also, and he talks about the fact that when we're 21, it's going to be much different than when we're 50 having this conversation. And to continually, that's why he has this conversation with his family every single year, is to see them develop in maturity. But if you're 50 and you're still talking about buying that lake cabin and you can't wait for me to die, then I might not leave you anything, right? Like, because his thing was just making sure we're building this estate to create a legacy beyond us, beyond the next generation. And there were a couple other things I picked out of the book. And one of them is he said, Is life measured by how much wealth we acquire or by the condition in which we leave our relationships? And then and I don't want to get too much in this book because this isn't what it's about, but it very much relates to what you are talking about.
It's just another resource, I think, to bring together, these two programs were separated in my life by almost a decade.
Oh, awesome.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And it's just how they've come together.
Yep. And everything's going to speak differently. He also says this isn't a function of being rich or having expensive advisors. It's a function of people deciding to treat their will as an opportunity to engage their intended beneficiaries and write the future together. So having these meetings, these family meetings or gatherings or whatever, isn't the intention of just, this is the will. No, it's talking about it and knowing what the family is going to do. And it was going to be easier to do that if you do what Tim is talking about first and relay that information and make that intentional to talk to people and open up about them, because so many do not.
Well, and I just love what he put there. To me, that's the definition of legacy planning, is that we are writing the future together today.
Yeah.
That, and the value of it, that, if you suddenly discovered a letter from your grandpa to his then fiance that you could share with the family, what a valuable tool, or what a valuable family heirloom that would be, right? They just had an article in our local paper about how a package of letters that a World War II veteran had written finally made it home to his heirs. And he'd passed away 5 or 6 years ago, but these letters finally made it home. It's kind of a long story, but that part of it, that all of this is connected, that the legacy planning, let's get about and be intentional about writing our family's future today, rather than I'm not here. And he's like, well, what would have Dad done? Okay. If we do our legacy planning right, and we've connected enough around board of directors or whatever, and take these tools and make them better, then we've got the tools that when I'm no longer a part of the operation, it's easier to, remember that conversation we had with Dad about, this, that, or the other thing?
And we were all there for that conversation,
right?
Not just one person there for that conversation. And so I want to be clear. Tim is not an estate planner, and I'm not an estate planner. You need to go find an estate planner. But we both share the motivation and the ideals of saying, hey, we need to talk to our family, and it's going to be scary. And Jolene Brown will tell you, when she goes and talks to a family, typically the one we think is going to be the biggest problem is not the biggest problem. And so don't be scared of those things, but start somewhere, because I agree with Tim. And I've had that experience with myself personally, growing up with nobody ever said, I'm proud of you, you've done a good job. You just see that they're proud of you. There's no pat on the back. There's no encouragement. It is 100% hardcore German, right? And I had to break out of that. But exactly what you said earlier, Tim, it becomes contagious, right, to tell people, oh, I'm proud of you, or you've done a good job, or whatever.
And I want to be clear too, is that this isn't about everybody gets a trophy, right?
Right.
This stuff is earned. And the other side of this equation is that if you've got this level of respect, and especially with a family member or your kids or your parents, that if you've ever have to have a difficult conversation about what you did in this moment is not good and we need to change it, if you've got this backdrop of connection, those conversations and their outcome, again, tend to be better. And so it's a long-term lesson, but it's just, I just can't relate to people how excited I am to get this word out there. You can reach out to me at bethelight517@gmail.com and share your success stories. You want some more information on about how to do it, some encouragement, whatever, bethelight517@gmail.com. And
so that means, you guys, this is not, Tim, I'm going to pick on you. This is not Tim's job.
No.
But he's got an email address, y'all, for you to email him about this, which has nothing to do with his business. Nope. And so Tim's pretty serious about this. So do that. bethelight517@gmail. If you have questions or you want to know more information, really reach out to him about it.
I have to check that. I have to make sure I got it right.
Yeah, we don't want him emailing some random person.
No.
But I think it's awesome. And I think Thanksgiving and Christmas and the holidays is a great opportunity to sit down, and a great opportunity. Here's the other thing. I am so sick and tired of social media. Like I've about had it. Our country is so divided right now. And even though I don't mind confrontation, I don't mind confrontation when I can sit down and have a great intellectual conversation. Yeah. But when people are screaming and yelling at each other, I am so done with it. And so we can sit in our truck in line to dump corn. We can sit in our truck and we can listen to talk radio and get all ticked off. We can look at social media and get all ticked off, or you can create your list of board of directors, right?
And I did find that email again, and I did make an error. It is bethelight517. bethelight517.
Matt, like MATT?
MATT 517.
Okay, bethelight Matt, MATT 517.
Based on the Gospel of Matthew. So bethelight Matt 517.
Okay, got it. Bethelight.
At Gmail.
Matt 517 at Gmail.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you looked.
I wanted it to be just Be the Light, but that one was already taken.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So I encourage you guys to do that. And I know this was maybe a little bit sappier than normal. However, I get a lot of feedback when I do podcasts like this, that people will share this with family members, or they will share these things with people, because it is an easier way to start that communication sometimes, to just share it and have people like Tim and I talking about it, right, and getting the family to think, getting friends to think outside the box. But being that hard, and I always think it's funny, I have friends like this that are very hard and cold, and they wear that as a badge of honor, right, that I'm not letting anybody in and the world stinks and blah, blah, blah. And that is, if that's the badge you want to wear, go for it. But guess what? Who are you impacting in life and you haven't even thought about who impacted you.
Right.
So take your stinky attitude and go someplace else. Like, I am not this, I'm still a little bit, I'm not going to pat you on the back. I can pat you on the back so long and encourage you so long. But if you choose not to take that initiative to do something and make that change, and it's going to be hard because you wore this badge of honor for a very long time, that I'm mean and I'm hard and I'm cold and I don't want anybody taking advantage of me. That's going to be hard to break that wall. But if you share a podcast, that might help break that wall just a little bit, to at least open the door to have that conversation. Yeah. And
again, this might not be for everybody. I get it. But at the same time, it is one of those things that it is too important to not share how to get better at it. That's the whole piece of it. That, again, like I said, these two trainings in my life were a decade apart. And it was just things that happened recently that says, you know what? I need to get better. Mm-hmm. And the best way for me to get better is to share this message with other people about how to get better. I'm not perfect, never have been, never will be. But at the end of the day, it's been a cool experience in my life about by letting other people know how important they are to you, and it is just is a great thing. And I hope we can help people along the way. Again, feel free to reach out to me on that email with questions, and I'll share some other stories. I mean, I just tipped the iceberg today.
Yeah. And Tim is kind of like me, likes to visit. So if you want to visit with him, give him a call. He'll visit.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think with that, we'll wrap it up. Thank you, Tim, for sharing that. Thanks for reaching out to me. I appreciate it. And it's not often that I have a lot of people reach out and say, oh, I think you should do this and this and this on your podcast, right? And so it's not often that I bring stuff in that isn't related to farming without the bank, because I do like to kind of keep it financial. Right. But the legacy part of it and the piecing it together, I think, is awesome. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it, Mary Jo.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay. So I just want to say thanks for listening, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this. Please, if you have questions, comments, concerns, ideas, please email me, maryjo@withoutthebank.com, and I am happy to answer those for you. If you have not gotten the book, Farming Without the Bank, please do that. If you are looking for the Willing Wisdom book, I'm sure you can get it somewhere online. I had it sent to me by somebody, and it is absolutely awesome. I don't have any of them. Otherwise, I would put them on my website. But I'm having a hard time getting a hold of the guy that wrote it. So anyway, okay, let me know if you need anything. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next episode. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the Farming Without the Bank podcast. We hope today's episode has inspired you to take control of your finances in new ways. Don't forget to check out our website, farmingwithoutthebank.com, and engage with us on our Facebook page, Farming Without the Bank. Join us next week as we smash more financial myths and empower you to accomplish your financial goals.